Hey, Kentucky, this is Mary Jo Perino. Tonight, a Lexington congressman copes with an unthinkable loss. Unemployment seekers get some unsatisfying answers in Frankfort. And I'll go one-on-one with Senate candidate Charles Booker. All that and more is next on Hey, Kentucky. Welcome into Hey, Kentucky with LEX 18 Sports Director Keith Farmer. Keith, this is certainly not how we wanted to start the show off today.
Not at all. A lot of sad news overnight around this area for sure.
Yes, we begin with the tragic story of Carol Lavelle Barr, wife of Congressman Andy Barr. The 39-year-old died suddenly at the couple's Lexington home yesterday. As the news spread last night, shows of support and condolences came from both sides of the political aisle, even from former rivals. Politics and primaries took their rightful place in the backseat to the reality that a father would now be raising his two young daughters alone after having to explain what happened to their mother. Political expert Bob Babbage offered these observations.
This kind of event connects us to each other in a most unusual way, a most loving and kind way, and that would reflect Carol Barr for sure. People have just said what a kind and compassionate and extraordinarily good person she was. So we should commit ourselves as we feel this pain and difficulty to emulate her best example.
The coroner believes Carol died of a heart-related incident. Keith, at a loss for words. My heart goes out to Congressman Barr. Obviously, his daughters, Eleanor and Mary Clay, are young and beautiful, and Carol was awesome. Everything that you've read and seen and heard about Carol, it's all true.
I mean, 39, just way too young to be moving on from this world. And I don't know if you've been around Andy Barr, it sounds like you have, but he is really a soft-spoken human being, and I've enjoyed the times that I've been around him, and I hurt for the family, hurt for the girls, and it is a difficult time for them. But it's been great to see, like you said, those from any side of the political aisle to come in and just give kind words to them.
Yeah, that politics means nothing when it comes to this. Amid nationwide protests, Kentucky's Mitch McConnell has introduced the U.S. Senate's version of a federal police reform bill. The legislation would restrict funding for local and state law enforcement departments that do not have bans on chokeholds. The bill would also strengthen funds for body cameras, make lynching a federal hate crime, and increase penalties for false police reports. But the bill's sponsor did not include a full ban on no-knock warrants, saying there's not enough data available to end them completely, although it's been done in Louisville.
I'm going to file cloture on the motion to proceed. And our Democratic friends, if they want to make a law and not just try to make a point, I hope they'll join us in getting on the bill and trying to move forward in the way the Senate does move forward when it's trying to actually get an outcome rather than just sparring back and forth.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer called the Scott bill ineffective and demanded significant improvement. Keith, we've talked about this a lot. Everything doesn't change overnight, but I do believe that some of this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's why I don't know that I can totally agree with Chuck Schumer on this one. I mean, he's saying it's totally ineffective. I think there are a lot of good measures put into this. And yeah, I do think there's some more that can be done. And if you want to do it, withhold some more of that funding until you get some of those things done, maybe some longer training for police and some other kind of diversity training like that. And I think, again, this is a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, it's not the end of the road. We can always do more, but we've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
The issues of race and criminal justice brought together folks in Harrodsburg last night. Local politicians, law enforcement, school superintendents, pastors, and even Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman participated on the panel. They were there to listen, to explain their roles in the community, how they're working on diversity training, and how they're working to improve relationships with the local Black community.
I have a Black son, so I tell him every morning to be careful, to make sure that he knows how to respond to officers. And it's a scary time that you have to do that. And just because my color is a little darker than yours, there should be no fear there. But because you have a badge, I shouldn't be afraid of you either.
The issue of no-knock warrants was also raised during the meeting. The police chief and sheriff vowed not to use them. And Keith, that is where I would say let's take that next step. Louisville, the city of Louisville has banned them. I don't know that we need to see a bunch of data on no-knock warrants if other law enforcement officials are willing to say, yeah, we can stop those.
Well, I did take a look at some of this, and I found out that it started in the Nixon administration. There was not a lot of people that were fans of it back then. In fact, they took a look at it, got rid of it at the federal level, and the journalists that did a lot of the data on this said that per year it's like 8 to 10 innocent people that are dying, because they're probably trying to protect themselves. I mean, this was started to stop drugs, and now, they're using them for other things. And so I think it's high time to get rid of.
Yeah. Agreed. For the second straight day, hundreds of people lined up at the state capitol hoping to get unemployment help. Many are frustrated, saying they applied for benefits months ago and have yet to receive a dime. Kentucky's troubles with getting applications processed has been well documented. Governor Beshear has said the state set up additional hotlines and hired more workers who are putting in longer hours. Yesterday was the first time they'd set up an in-person help center after a protest was planned in Frankfort.
Kentucky was unprepared to handle the amount of responses that they had. I know Andy Beshears goes on every day at 5 o'clock and he talks about the things that's going on. And one of his topics is he'll mention the deaths, but what about the good news? What about the people that have gotten their unemployment or had their issues resolved? Or when are you going to help us?
State troopers cut off the line about 90 minutes after the doors opened today, telling the crowd that the capacity for handling in-person claims had been reached. They were told to leave their information, that someone would call them next week. Keith, yesterday I think it was pretty successful. I think people got some stuff resolved today. So many more people showed up. They were telling them it was going to be like an 8-hour wait to get in.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they've done this, because I think it's forcing the hand and making sure that people are making those calls to the individuals. It's just a shame that this has taken so long, but I'm sure you're like me. You've probably heard from more than one or two friends that are going through this, and so it's a tough time for everybody. And to be honest, Andy Beshear long ago, maybe a month or two ago, said that it all falls on him. So I like the fact that he is adding more people to make these calls and get in touch with these individuals.
Yeah, it's help that was needed a while ago. Turning to next week's primary election, now that the state is no longer taking applications for absentee ballots, Kentucky knows exactly how many people chose to vote that way. The Secretary of State says 937,000 people have either voted early or requested an absentee ballot. Of them, almost 890,000 of those voters requested to mail theirs in. More than 770,000 of them did it using the state's new web portal. That's about a quarter of all registered voters in Kentucky, so turnout is already higher than we've seen in other primaries.
To put this in perspective, when I was on the ballot last year, you had competitive primaries for governor, Secretary of State, and other offices. Turnout was 19%. We're already at about a quarter of registered voters, over a quarter of registered voters.
To be counted, absentee ballots must be postmarked by Election Day on June 23rd. And Keith, those are encouraging numbers.
Yeah, for sure. And we kind of figured they would be with all that has been going on in this country and this state especially. So we kind of figured that it would be a high turnout, and we still don't know how many are going to go stand in those long lines at Kroger Field and other places.
That's what I'm anxious to see. Will the lines be really long? Will anybody show up there? I don't know. Obviously, some people will go do that, but I am very curious to see how many will go both in Louisville and in Lexington. All right, up next on Hey Kentucky, we stick with politics as I have another chat with Charles Booker. The Louisville Democrat is trying to make a late charge in the U.S. Senate race ahead of next Tuesday's election. Stay with us.